Muy buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Reciban un fraternal saludo.
Receive my greetings from Colombia. We welcome you to this virtual panel
En la campaña de hashtag
for the campaign #1000minutos. This campaign started at the beginning of 2021 to have a global call to the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights, denouncing the thousands and thousands of victims to the violation of human rights. Since the very beginning, our petition was an invitation for the Commission to the Inter-American Human Rights Commissions to go to Colombia. In our first panel, 1 month ago, we talked with Joel Hernandez about this. Some days later, after our conference, the Commission requested the Colombian government authorization to visit Colombia, but we are still waiting for this before we had a positive answer. We want to thank all the workers in Colombia who have sent us videos with their messages, so the Human Rights Commission will go to Colombia. We also want to thank the trade union movement for their support in having the Commission visit Colombia. We believe that that the letter that we sent was very important, because we talked about the government of Biden and also the visit of Garcia Ramirez to Washington, talking about her concern about the situation regarding the human rights violations in Colombia and demanding adjustments between the countries. The next day, the Colombian state changed its decision and accepted the visit of the Commission on Human Rights, acknowledging the importance of the visit of this commission. And we know that to stop violence, we need to have other instruments of action. When the report is published, we will have to work on this. Brothers and sisters, we have a lot of work ahead of us because the campaign continues. I apologize for that. Today in this panel, we want to mobilize citizens, and we have raised some questions, and these questions are: what can we do to make citizen movement become a way to strengthen democracy and have a real social change? The next question is, how has this objective been achieved by the workers and the union movement in other countries? To respond to these questions, today we have in the panel from the USA, Rocio Sáenz, Vice President of EIU and President of the service sector, property service sector of UNI. From Finland, we have Jarto Eloanta, President of the Union Confederation. In the Netherlands, Balman Balminsen, the official of international issues, also from the unions of the Netherlands. In Chile, we have Senator Alejandro Guillem, and from our beautiful country, we have Senators Alexander Lopez and Uribe. And in this way, and now I wish to give the floor to Rocio Sáenz, Executive Vice President of EIU and President of the property services sector. Rocio, welcome. You have the floor. Thank you very much, Ofelia. Thank you for that presentation and all of those questions. It's really an honor to be here with all these political and union leaders at global level. And I really wish to acknowledge the work that you do to move ahead with social justice at all levels. In in SEIU and our leaders, we are very much inspired by this enormous and historic general strike and weeks of protests that we've seen in Colombia. And as we all know, I want to acknowledge that every person that participates makes a sacrifice. To do this, I wish to thank everybody for this inspiration. When we look at these collective actions, we know that we are moving forward at all levels, especially when we're talking about justice for the workers. We are talking about how we move forward, how we make progress in the future of our communities in general. In our union, which is the Service Employees Union, we represent 2 million members that are united by the belief in the dignity and worth of workers and guided by a vision of social justice at all levels. We believe that all work must be valued, all people must be respected. It doesn't matter where they're from, where they were born, what the color of their skin is, and that all our members can move forward and that we can have a better world with more justice for the generations to come. That is a vision for a better world where the civil rights, the human rights, the labor rights are respected, where there is justice, economic and social and racial justice. And in our unions, we understand how important it is to have alliances. And we also believe in the solidarity of the workers that are building a better world for our future, and where together we can move forward, we can move our families forward here in the USA, in Colombia, and all around the world. Of course, we are very concerned with the violence against protesters in Colombia and in the overall, it's the long-term violence against union leaders and social justice activists. We also want to thank Uni Americas for this call to solidarity and for launching the 1000 Minutos campaign. Also to the leaders from SEIU who have participated in the campaign. Our president, Mary Kay Henry, has produced a video for the campaign in which she called for as you said, Ophelia, she called for the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights to go to Colombia to investigate the political violence. And she closed by saying in the video, with all of our love and solidarity, we stand shoulder to shoulder with you, and we will not stop until there is justice for everyone in Colombia. After that video, the Colombian general strike occurred. And in all countries, we know that going out to a strike is not something that is taken lightly. So there was a lot of inspiration being here with you today. Our union, as you said, Ophelia, also together with SEIU and AFL-CIO and Teamsters have come together with their members to put their voices together and demand that the violence in Colombia come to an end. And now with all of our Uni Americas partner unions across the continent and around the world, we have shown what it means for workers and unions to take action together globally. We are pleased that based on all of our campaigning together, the Colombian government has allowed the Commission to pay a visit to Colombia to investigate the violence. So we are looking forward to seeing their initial report. We have a very clear vision that workers can achieve many changes when we all come together and when we fight together for our vision and for justice for all. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the experience in the USA. We have an experience with a fight for 15. This is something that started with workers demanding a minimum wage of $15 per hour. And obviously, today it's $7.25, the minimum wage. So now we're asking for the double of that wage, and also the right to have a union, to have union representation. So when this fight started, it started in New York in 2012. Fast food workers who were immigrants, Black and brown people, put their voices together demanding justice. They were tired of having precarious working conditions. They were also tired of having to work in 2 or 3 different jobs to have at least a decent wage. They were tired of everything that they were having every single day, making decisions about paying their rent or buying the medicine for their families. They were absolutely tired of all of this, and they said, that's it, stop it. They started demanding for justice, the fight for $15 as a minimum wage. And this inspired many other workers to do the same because they saw themselves reflected in this fight. They also saw hope and their dreams of being able to achieve something better. And this fight that started in New York started expanding across other workers everywhere. There were more and more strikes expanding everywhere. Workers talking also about not only about their workplace, but also all other workers like them, millions of workers like them who were suffering the same problems. So there was a movement created, which was the Fight for 15. And they were also able to create alliances with organizations that were fighting for social justice also. And this movement has created changes. Today, there are 24 million workers throughout the country who have been able to increase their minimum wages. Some are on their way to reaching those $15 as a minimum wage. And this is all thanks to all these workers who started this movement. In many states and many cities, they now have even more than $15. Now there is also a draft bill to double the minimum wage. And 9 years ago, this was absolutely impossible to think of. And now we see that it is possible. And all of this is thanks to the constant and continuous work of creating this unity of workers. Of course, right now we are in a pandemic, in a health crisis, and we have all been shocked this year and last year. But today, it is these times that are showing us the importance of being together, united one with another, because the workers have been hit by 3 crises at the same time: the health crisis, the economic crisis, and also another crisis, which is racial injustice. And none of these were caused by new problems. As we know, in this country, we have the services and care jobs that pay very little, where workers are continuously fighting to put bread on their table. We also see healthcare workers, education workers having the same problems. And we are also seeing the bad treatment towards Black and brown people, and also the institutional racism that we have in this country, as we saw it last year with the murder of George Floyd, which was very evident. There we saw the disparities, discrimination, inequality faced by Black and brown Americans. And at SEIU, we have already been working for years to link the fights for economic and racial justice. And it has been very clear that there is no economic justice if there is no racial justice. Last year, when all these protests began, when these historic protests for Black lives broke out in the US last year, we saw an opportunity to bring workers and social movement activists together to demand a better future for all our families, Black, brown, Native American, Asian, white. SEIU has worked with racial justice groups, social justice organizations, and labor unions, joining forces for a nationwide walkout to confront systemic racism. There we saw that fast food, nursing homes, rideshare, farms, airport workers, and more joined youth, climate, social, racial justice activists to demand that corporations and government take action to confront the triple threat of white supremacy, public health emergency, and the broken economy. Tens of thousands of people participated in the strike, and it's been incredible to see also at global level how this has occurred. It was wonderful seeing so many workers raising their voices and demanding that corporations and governments take action to confront systemic racism in our society and an economy that is holding back Black and brown communities across the country. We are on a journey to build a society where everyone's work is valued and all people are respected. Together we will fight anti-Black racism, structural racism, and all forms of racial oppression that prevent working people from earning a good living and having a good life. We, as union leaders, as leaders of organized workers, need to understand the concept of working together and fighting together. That's what a union is. And also, we know that fighting together, and I also reflect on something that's very important for me, with what Martin Luther King said, we shall overcome because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And when it bends, it's because we are bending it towards justice. My last words are, as President Mary Kay Henry said, as she said, we will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with you until there is justice for everyone in Colombia. And with this, I wish to thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Rocío, por acompañarnos.
Thank you, Rocia, for being with us.
And thank you for sharing your experiences. We are very grateful. Now I want to give the floor to Harman Budatki, Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands, the Union. Fatma, go ahead, please. You have the floor now.
Thank you, and thank you, Rocia, for your nice words about the fight for 15. We've been following that in the Netherlands as well. It was a good fight. Well, dear comrades, I want to read out our statement from the FNV for the situation in Colombia. The FNV stands in solidarity with people of Colombia as they face this vicious assault by its own government, just for exercising their right to freedom of expression. We support the trade unions in Colombia, which have taken the brave decision to continue with peaceful demonstrations in line with the decisions of the National Strike committee. We think the government of President Duque should end the repression, demilitarize urban areas, dismantle ASMET, punish those responsible for the violence against the demonstrations, guarantee the right of peaceful protests, and start negotiations over the unified emergency plan with the NSC. For recovery from the COVID pandemic and its profound crisis, Colombia needs a new social contract. Due to the history of permanent strikes and demonstrations of the Colombian population, and especially the trade union workers, it's very clear that society demands a new social contract based on equality and justice. In that new national social agreement, the participation of social organizations and above all, workers have an important role to play. Without a broad and transparent process of participation of the society, the peace process will continue to be blocked and collapsed. We are afraid that the repression and violence will continue. A true and meaningful social dialogue is key for that matter, where social partners are respected and heard. FNV sees successful social dialogue as a requirement for economic progress. It helps to resolve important economic and social problems and promotes good governance. In the Netherlands, social dialogue is natural, but this does not mean that it always runs smoothly. Social dialogue plays a crucial role in promoting decent work opportunities for women and men and for the entire population. Current and future generations will benefit. Social dialogue in the Netherlands can involve three parties: the government, employee organizations, and employers' organizations, or just the employee organizations and employer organizations, so two parties. Consultations may be informal or institutionalized, but it is often a combination of both and can take place at national, regional, or company level. So there are many flavors. In the Netherlands, social dialogue is a part of our culture. It was learned throughout history through painful internal struggles. After World War II, it was necessary to start the construction of a new social agreement through social dialogue was a way to achieve peace and rebuild our society. Of course, the context and the situation in Colombia is completely different. We are well aware about that. But still, I believe that violent confrontation to the workers who express their legitimate demands can never be the solution. FNV has been standing next to the Trade Union of Colombia for the last 20 years. And we are willing to do that in the future as well. Be of help and significance, offering the experience and solidarity we have. I wish you all the best in the effort to reach a post-strike social contract for a prosperous and peaceful country. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Fadna.
Thank you very much, Fadna, for your intervention. We want to also thank the Netherlands Federation for Unions for their constant support for our campaign and for many other initiatives always defending human rights and working rights in Colombia. Thank you very much for being here with us today. I'm also seeing that there are people from everywhere in Latin America. We really appreciate all the messages we are receiving in Facebook. Here on the screen, you can see which are our social media. We can continue sharing this and spreading this. Now, I want to give the floor to Alejandro Guillet, the Chilean senator. Welcome. You have the floor. Thank you very much, Ophelia. Greetings to everybody, all the participants, my colleagues, Alexander Lopez and Gustavo Oliva, and of course, to congratulate for all your initiatives and for everybody here present. The role of UniAmericas in the Colombian crisis, helping and pressuring for solutions. And I also want to share this story that Sebastián Piñera, who's accused of human rights violations in Chile. I also want to say what has happened in Chile. In Chile, we see a social explosion, which was very unexpected. Nobody expected this to happen in Chile. But we were hiding a world that is emerging from the rise on the tickets of the subway. But it's not what people are really complaining about. They're complaining about 30 years with a level of violence which I've never seen before, not even during dictatorship and the armed forces. This was something unbelievable. And the government decided to apply force and spoke about war and a common enemy, and decided to take armed forces to start repressing. And then a paradox started. The Fourth Army communicated the president of the republic, and the general said this: I'm not in war with anyone. This is a political problem, and it should be solved by politicians. And the armed forces, for the first time that I remember, said that they were not going to go to repress, and that the institutional organisms should solve this problem. Despite this, the conflict started to worsen, and conversations started to make Pineda leave. Even from the right wing, people started to see Pineda as a threat. And I suggested to anticipate elections. That was what people were protesting for. And when we were in the midst of this, the November agreement took place. A group of politicians, some from the parliament, without consulting their parties, met with the president and agreed on passing a new constitution, a plebiscite for the Chilean population to decide upon a new constitution. And the parties got prepared, and new parties started to appear as new possible candidates for constitution. And this brought about a new phenomenon, which is in October, the October movement. The movement in November was proposing for a new constitution, and there was another proposal. We want this constitution to have citizenship. Millions of women in Santiago and in other regions went to the street. In less than 15 days, they voted, and they made it possible to have gender equality in this constitution. And secondly, there were some spots reserved for seats, and we had three demands. One, to have women seats, the participation of the indigenous people and independent was approved 10 days before. This was parties were very eager to accept and to be part of this. This is going to have a lot of consequences for the future. In the midst of this plebiscite, which should take place in March, in Chile and in the rest of the world, the pandemic started, and so it was postponed. It was postponed 2 times, and it only took place in October last year. The government was facing to social discontent and the pandemic, and so the support, the very delayed support that they received, only caused more unhappiness, and this created the perfect storm. Demand for social changes and a government that was not handling the pandemic very well, despite the credibility of public policies that changes the attitudes, the behaviors of people to be able to face situations like this. This had already happened in the past. It was impossible to handle this, and as the pandemic brought about a lot of problems also. So finally, in this scenario that was adding to the social unrest, then we started receiving surprises. 50% of the population, but in previous elections, very few people had voted. Both in the traditional policy was very worn out previously. So this was considered as votes that were being recovered. So the 78% of the population who voted said that they wanted a new constitution. That means that people from the right wing also voted for this. And the 80%, more than 80% in my region, almost 86% said that they wanted to be redacted by new people, not the common politicians. This was not an attack against the government, but all the political class. In May, the political parties were very surprised by 40% who voted. 5% was lost. The right wing was wept. The traditional parties were very beat up, maybe not the Socialist Party, and the new independent parties appeared.
Sin contar a los independientes que los partidos políticos les habían abierto cupo en los partidos.
This means that there's part of the population that does not feel represented by the parties that already existed. This population these independent parties come from different social classes, and they have already expressed that they will not support those who supported this. The government reacted after this, and after 1 year and 4 months of crisis, was willing to hear the opposition, and they supported families that have over 4 members, offering aids. Why? Because the president received demands of offering more real solutions for the crisis they were going through. Then the governments were created. This was a political position that did not exist in Chile until then. This was in an attempt to start a more decentralized process.
del Congreso y la nula poder
and
de las regiones y de las comunas a la toma de decisiones del Estado-Nación. En esa segunda vuelta de
in
gobernador,
this
la ciudadanía lo
time,
es como una
the
votación,
citizenship
votó menos del 20%.
voted the country, the candidates, and less than 20% voted. And that means that they were
Desafección con el sistema de partidos políticos.
counting on the constituent process.
Las señales están dadas.
I think that the message is very clear. Citizenship is asking for a new treaty,
Requiere una nueva forma de hacer política.
and they want a new way of carrying out politics.
Hay una competencia
The parties that already exist are not listening to the population.
parlamentarias, las listas parlamentarias, y además haciendo los programas, los equipos. Los partidos no ha pasado nada.
The parties are not dealing what is happening. The citizenship wants a new social and political axis. They want people that will govern for them, with them. That includes having a social and political alliance.
Llamadas oposiciones, o la izquierda y la centro izquierda, que se entiendan para que después se unan. Eso es lo que estamos trabajando nosotros.
That is what we are working on. We want to avoid excessive tensions between the coalitions in the center right, and we want people to be heard. This process was helped a lot by trade unions, and Uni Americas in Chile had worked a lot. We have worked with them, and we want them to participate in the next coalition. That was the last agreement which the parties took together. This process is seeing the opposition of traditional parties, even those who call themselves progressive parties. So more and more organizations from the civil population, the independent parties, which are pushing for a change, and the left-wing parties are trying to contain this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator, for being with us. We know that you have a very tight schedule, so thank you very much for your continuous solidarity. Now we will talk about the local situation. From Colombia, Senator Alexander Lopez, a senator of the Republic. Welcome, Senator. You have the floor.
Ofelia, buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, Ofelia.
Buenas tardes también
Good afternoon,
a todos los compañeros y compañeras
all our brothers and sisters,
foro que nos han
panelists in this very important forum
el día de hoy.
that we have been invited.
Pues en medio de
It's a very important forum because of the situation, the political and social and human rights situation that we are living in our country. Absolutely horrible.
como siempre lo hemos
So thank you very much. And as we have always said to the different sectors of the union movement who are in solidarity with the workers and the people of Colombia, especially with CIU
y naturalmente con
and
las distintas organizaciones
with the different social organizations
avanzan también en
that also move forward in solidarity. So we're very thankful for everything.
También al sindicalismo de
Also to the unions of the USA
ha jugado un papel
who have played a very important role in this humanitarian crisis that we are facing and the attacks from the Colombian government, Iván Duque's administration, and who have taken all of this process of defending human rights as their own. And thanks to their denouncements and campaigns, especially the Mil Minutos campaign has had a great impact on the workers of the USA, but also had an impact in the Congress of the USA with the Inter-American Commission for Human Rights and in the government of the USA of President Biden. So again, I wish to thank the solidarity that we have received from the union movement in the USA, and we know that this will continue, They will continue helping us fight for the Colombian people. I also wish to greet the senator from Chile and all other brothers and sisters who are with us today in this important panel. I think it's a good occasion to send a greeting of solidarity and say how heartfelt we are with the Democrats in Colombia and around the world for all the victims that we have had in our country since April 28, since the general strike in Colombia. And this is an expression of solidarity, but also
nada justifica. Nada
of loss, because nothing is justifiable, nothing is acceptable with regards to what has occurred to our Colombian government, not only in the hundreds of years in the past, but especially in these past 53 days, where 73 young people were murdered, especially by the state, and in this case, by the government of Iván Duque, where the public forces have registered and shown that they have been part of 50% of these murders against young people. And I must say, I have to start my presentation by saying that the world must know the horrible things that are happening, how much blood is being spilled by the administration of Iván Duque, who has made public forces commit all of these crimes, that they are not only have not only murdered 73 young people during the general strike, but also 290 people have disappeared, and also 2,500 people have been victims, have been injured by public forces in these times, and young people who have been hurt also by public forces. Some have been blinded by public forces, and also there has been sexual harassment and violations and rapes. Women have been raped during the protests across the country. In this context of Colombia, I think that we are living the most terrible times of our history. We did not expect. I think that we never expected that repression or the decision of President Iván Duque would be to close the doors to dialogue. And we know that in Colombia, they've had a political line that has been imposed in the country. It's a war policy. And we never expected, in the framework of our pacific, peaceful protests in Colombia, that we would have all of these terrible things that are happening in Colombia. So I must denounce this so that the international community can help us with this, and that all these crimes that have been committed in our country against youth and against the people must go to court. There is no room in Colombia today to take these cases to court, but we hope that the international organizations can help us and intervene to take all of these cases to court. We want justice, because everything that has happened in our country has been more than severe. In Colombia, the social protests have become the only tool that we have to face the political lines that are governing Colombia throughout history. And we have to look back 50 years, maybe, where the country has lived one of the worst times of violence and confrontation, and also the worst times of governments that, simulating that they are doing things lawfully, have put the country in the worst scenarios of violence and poverty and misery. Those who have governed Colombia today have made Colombia one of the most corrupt governments, one of the most corrupt countries. 100% of public money, of the people's money, 24% of that is lost. The state's resources are lost in the hands of corruption. We must also say that Colombia is also one of the countries that has the greatest inequality. It is the third most unequal country in the world. And that shows the way that we have been governed. Colombia today has indicators that have been reported by the state itself and other sources that monitor the economy and also monitor the social situation of our country. And that shows that 42% of the population are living under the poverty line, and more than 18% are in extreme poverty. And that means that in Colombia, nearly 11 million Colombians today do not have food to put on their table. And also, in Colombia, we have terrible figures for unemployment also. It is women who are suffering the most with regards to unemployment in our country. There's more than 38% of unemployment, and also youth has more than 24% of unemployment in our country. And that means that these social figures show women, and especially youth, in the worst conditions of poverty. Colombia also, in this economic situation of our country, has a tax system where the most powerful groups, especially the finance sector, and the greatest richness, the greatest wealth of our country are the ones who pay the least taxes. So from the government and the state, they allow the richest people in our country to have subsidies and tax exemptions, while the middle class and the most poor people are the ones who have to pay the greatest taxes. So that situation has led the union movement and also the social movement to start mobilizing and making protests across the country. We've seen this in the last 53 days. And then we've also seen all the repression on the part of the state, with all the victims and in violations to human rights. So in this first presentation, I want to say that the Colombian people today reject Iván Duque's administration, and only 1% of the people recognize his government as a good government. The rest, more than 85% of the Colombian people reject Iván Duque's administration. Only 7% of the population acknowledge him as good. So that means that in Colombia, the situation regarding democracy and ensuring human rights is very difficult today. So with this that we see today in our country, we are looking at an institutional breakdown where citizens do not have guarantees and they don't have rights, and the social and people are being repressed and are being treated with conflict. We have an internal conflict that shows what is happening in our country. So in this way, I want to continue calling on the solidarity of international organizations, because it's the only tool that we have today to guarantee the lives of the people of Colombia and of all the people who are protesting peacefully to recover our democracy and the right of law and live with dignity in Colombia. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, senador Alexander.
Thank you very much, Senator, for your words and for participating in this event.
Excelente intervención.
It was a wonderful presentation. Now, to close the political view of Colombia, I wish to invite Senator Estabón Bolívar. Senator Bolívar, you have the floor. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you, everybody, for the solidarity that you've had with Colombia, with the help that has been given to us by Senator Alessandro Lopez. We were in Washington 1 month ago, and it was the unions that helped us to put pressure on the Human Rights Commission and also the Congress of the USA so that they would talk about the situation in Colombia. That's why we are very thankful. As Alessandro Lopez has said, my brother has said, our situation is horrible. Just to tell you what has happened in the last 4 days. Santiago Ochoa appeared, a young boy, 22 years old. He was beheaded. His head appeared in a bag in the city. Hernán David Ramírez, his body appeared floating in the river. Jaime Alfonso was murdered by the public forces with a gun. He was fired at in the chest because he wasn't wearing the protocol suit. Also, Ms. Cristian David Castillo was murdered 2 nights ago. Also, he was shot in the head by the SMAT, which is our public forces, also in Bogota. And today, Kevin Andrés Garcia appeared also murdered. He was found in the valley. As our brother of Chile said, they had never seen such horrible things in Chile before. Nothing like that had ever occurred since the dictatorship. This is a genocide against our youth. They are acting directly against the people, public forces, paramilitaries. They are all attacking us. And we have recorded videos. We have shown them in the USA. We want to show them in Europe, where we see civilians being shot at right next to the police. So this is showing what is happening, because paramilitaries have existed in Colombia forever. This hasn't been stopped, but we knew that paramilitary was something that was illegal. We knew it was there, but we thought it was undercover, that they wouldn't attack people. But now they are attacking civilians right next to the police, and nothing is being done. So we are really living a terrible time, because there's nobody we can denounce this with. The government, I don't know if it was an intelligence, something that they thought of. So they shut out all our control organizations. So who can we file a claim with? The courts are part of the government. We can't do anything. Nobody will listen to us. The district attorney is part of the government. So they are giving impunity to the government. Also, the Minister of Justice of Duque has just been elected to discipline all the police officers. But she's not going to do that, because they are part of her group. And the defendant, ombudsman of the people, this is something that we had till some time ago, this person used to visit the conflicts, used to help the people. He was an ombudsman. He defended the people. But here, we do not have a division of the powers. Here, the ombudsman is elected by the Congress. It's not a democracy. We do not have a democracy. It's just a facade. It's a dictatorship. And if we look at the causes of this, because some people might say that we are exaggerating. Well, no, we're not. These are things that are happening. It's like bursting a balloon that has been inflating for decades, of a lot of injustice throughout decades. And the worst thing is that the pandemic has made visible all the neoliberalism. It has made visible the neoliberal policies, because when we didn't have any more resources for the pandemic, that obviously all the governments of the world had to use their resources to address the pandemic. But here in Chile, they realized we had a lack of resources because the year before the pandemic, there had been a tax reform with the rich people, with the wealthiest people. And that's what my brother was saying just a second ago. Always the tax reforms give benefits and exemptions to the wealthiest people so that they will pay less taxes. And that is unequal. Before the pandemic, we have a 20.5 billion pesos. That is a figure that was given as a present to the wealthy because they were exempted from taxes. And when the pandemic arrived, the government said, let's do another reform, nearly for the same amount that they had given to the wealthy, but they want to take the money out of the poor people now. They want to tax 19% to the food basket, the essential food basket, that is eggs, bread, and also they want to tax, they want to put a tax on the minimum wage. Those people who earn more than $600, they are going to be taxed. But the people can't stand this anymore. They're seeing how they are treating the wealthy and what terrible things they're doing to the poor. So what did they do when the poor protested? They killed them. But people are still out on the streets. And so what is the government doing? They're still killing more people. They're killing the youth. But they are decided to continue killing. But people have lost everything. So they continue to go out on the streets. They have nothing else to lose. We have nothing else to lose. This is a country where social injustice is something that is occurring more and more every day. Today, we have a youth unemployment of 24%. We have 1,700,000 young people who are unemployed. There's also a lack of education. We have 700 graduates of high school, and only a few can go to university. The rest can't do anything. They don't have jobs. They don't have education. What can they do? What can young people do if they don't have education or jobs? Those young people are out on the streets. They have nothing to lose. They have nothing. So they are prepared to be killed. We are calling on everybody, asking them to be patient, to wait for the new elections. But they don't listen to us anymore. They are out on the streets because we have escalated to such level of having lost everything that they no longer want to accept that Duque is in the government. They are just killing everybody. So after the strike, 10 days ago, there was the order, they were ordered to stop the strike, but young people don't listen. They are continuing out there. Young people continue to be out on the streets and they continue to be killed. So anything that you can do to help us, to help Colombia, having an impact on multilateral organizations, we will be forever thankful to you, because what's happening in Colombia is going to continue escalating, because there's police and intelligence who are trying to take young people out of their homes, to register them. There are thousands of young people who have been injured and they do not want to go to a clinic, because if they go to a clinic, they will be taken and they will be taken to jail or to court, even by the paramilitary. So this crowdfunding to take medicine and face masks and helmets, it's not enough. I don't want to take much longer, so thank you very much for listening to us. Thank you, and please help us raise our voices in Colombia to the world, because it's very difficult to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gustavo. I want to thank you for being here today and telling about the last events that are happening in Colombia. We know that all of you have a lot of events, but you're still here participating in the event. And so we want to close with greetings from Haku Oloranta, and also greetings from Finland. And Carlos is going to help us projecting the video. Go ahead, Carlos.
Está rodando saludo. Tres minutos 20 dura.
It's 3 minutes long. Unfortunately, we are not able to see the video, but it will be filmed on the transmission later on.
Comrades, on behalf of the whole Finnish trade union movement, I want to show our and my own support to the Colombian trade union movement, to all of you. We have been following closely the situation in Colombia with a great concern. The Finnish trade union movement has been cooperating with the Colombian trade union movement for decades. Solidarity and supporting human rights is at the core of the union movement. The right to organize and to establish unions are an important part of the human rights. Every person should also have the right to protest without a fear of being subjected to the violence. The murders of demonstrators in Colombia should be publicly condemned. Disappearances should be properly investigated. The victims of the violence must get justice. We are trying to do our best to support you, our Colombian friends, in several ways. Just a while ago, the leaders of the Finnish trade union movement sent a letter to the chambers of the President Ivan Duque Marquez, asking to stop the repression and the violence against the protesters and to enter into the dialogue with social organizations of Colombia. Unfortunately, we have not received any reply yet. We can also try to get our voices heard in our country and in the European Union to get more pressure against the Colombian government. Although trade union rights are extensive in Finland, we are not spared of all these kind of problems as well. Collective bargaining has become more difficult as some employers don't want to negotiate collective agreements with the unions anymore. Some employers also want to restrict the right to strike. Unfortunately, trade unions cannot count on the goodwill of the politicians in Finland either. We all need to stay strong and resilient
30
in trying
segundos
to
de video.
improve the quality of life for workers. I very much admire your courage to fulfill your heavy task in a country where human rights are not respected at all. Even though the trade union movement operates mainly nationally, we have to and need to think and link internationally.
10 segundos.
Defending rights must be done together. Together we are stronger.
5, 4, 3, 2, adelante.
Gracias, Jacob, por ese saludo.
Thank you very much for that
Sin duda, el respaldo internacional
video from very far away. The international support is essential for this transformation process we're going through in Colombia. I want to thank all the people that were connected here today in this important event. We've reached the end of our event. We want to thank all the panelists that were with us here today and to all of you from participating from Colombia and from everywhere in the world. We have the same dream for unity, solidarity, and hope. We want to continue to be the voice for those over 1,200 leaders who were murdered. And please remember that hashtag 1000 minutos, 100 minutes, represent all of them. We will see each other on the elections in 2022.